Okay, welcome everyone. 50 minutes of positivity. It's Friday. We got the weekend coming up where we won't be connecting, and I'm hoping that I can leave you today with some food for thought about how to how to maybe walk into this weekend with some additional tools. There's nothing new, nothing we haven't done before, but again, so much of what we're doing here is just a recurring reminder. So here's a good friend of mine, Kelly Boys. She's an author. She's a wonderful teacher, and she wrote this great book called The Blind Spot. And here's what she has to say. One of the secrets of accessing our inner knowing is to let go of a big collective blind spot that we share, the illusion of control. When we can do that, we can spend more time in a state of flow, taking life as it actually comes in present sight, rather than living under the mistaken impression that we can or should be able to control everything that comes our way. I think this last piece is really key, right? This is key. This idea that what our mind tells us we should be able to do. I think so much of our suffering and our struggles come from certain unquestioned narratives that simply pop out of nowhere, probably because when our brains were in very formative stages, that was a repetitive experience that we had. And it could be that someone told us that we should be this way, or we should be that way, or we should be more attractive, or have shorter hair or longer hair. And then, of course, you get into the absurdities of things like, well, you are as tall as you are. There's not much you can do about it. And so being upset about the fact that, you're too tall or too short, seems pretty obvious, right? When we say it that way. And yet our mind does this kind of stuff all the time. And this blind spot that she's referring to is actually a literal thing. So, for example, we look at this image here. We're driving down the road. We see the sign. It all makes perfect sense to us because this is what registers in our mind. When in reality, what's happening is that this is what our eye is actually able to see. Now, keep in mind, our eye is constantly moving, right? So what it's doing, in essence, it's sort of scanning this imperfect image, and it's capturing lots of bits of data, and then it fills it in so that we get to have the perception that this is what we're actually seeing. But biologically speaking, this is what's happening in any given moment. And that's in part because of the anatomy of our eye, right? We have this optic nerve at the very, very back of our eye, where all of the information from the eye gets passed on to our brain. And so by definition, we can't see anything. There are no nerve endings there that can take in sight. And so we literally have a blind spot. Now, the way we cover for that is that the eyes are constantly moving and they're shifting around, again, gathering data, but then the end image that we see in our mind's eye, if you will, is something that has been confabulated by the brain. And keep in mind, this is just the eye. So the ears do the same thing, right? We hear what we want to hear or what we've been conditioned to hear. Same with our senses. Our bodies just respond in a certain way. Same with taste. Everything that we experience ultimately is the end result of all of these nerve endings throughout our body, leading up the spinal column into this thing called the brain. And the brain itself is actually encased in a dark, it's like the brain has no direct contact to the outside world, right? It's all based on data that's fed up to it at different speeds, at different rates, at different, depending on the stimuli. And then the narrative and the story is pieced together in this dark room within which our brain lives. And how does it do it? Well, it does the best job that it can based on repetition, like past experiences. It says, oh, that worked pretty well last time. Let's try that again. Oh, I need to adjust that and change it, right? So long story short, what we're doing here on a regular basis is we are trying to control that process to whatever extent we can, hence the term self-directed positive neuroplasticity. And the more we repeatedly question what our mind is seeing and experiencing, and become more aware that it is actually experiencing certain things based on past conditioning, right? So that's sort of this the slow pull on the thread of freedom is beginning to become aware of all of these different things happening, and then being able to make some different choices moment by moment. So I thought today, why don't we practice playing with these, what we would call blind spots? So let's start by closing our eyes. And first and foremost, I want you to notice what happens to your experience depending on where you shine the spotlight of attention. And we do this here all the time, right? Right now, let's focus on the sensation of your pelvis and your sit bones and your glutes in contact with the chair or the bed or wherever you happen to be. Just notice what it's like to be sitting. Bring your full attention to the subjective experience of sitting. The question you can ask yourself is, how do I know that I'm sitting? Well, I can feel it or sense it or visualize it or whatever it might be, right? So become aware of how the brain is filling in this narrative, taking these sensations of what it's like to be in contact with the chair. And then the brain is filling this in to the story that says, oh, I'm sitting right now. And then shine your attentional flashlight onto the sensation of breathing. Notice the body's breathing. Again, asking yourself, how do I know that I'm breathing? Like, what are the signs that I can clue into that round out the story that, oh, this is the body breathing? Notice your belly and your chest, and your shoulders, and so on. And now shifting our attention to the ground. How do we know that there's ground beneath us? What are the signs that convey the sense of groundedness? So noticing your feet, the chair, sensation of sitting in your spine. And the thing that I'd like to draw your attention to is how imperfect and how unpixelated each of these experiences are, right? When I say look for the telltale signs that you're sitting or breathing, notice how cursory the information is that we're getting. Like, yes, I can feel the ground under my feet, I can feel the chair. And that constitutes the entire story of there's ground beneath my feet. Why? Because the brain basically fills in the rest. And with breathing, I can only focus on a tiny, tiny amount of the actual experience of breathing. And yet I know, my brain knows that, oh, that's the body breathing. So just appreciating for a moment how much the brain fills in for us. We get a tiny bit of data, And then the brain does the rest based on past experiences. And this, of course, is necessary, right? We need this in order to survive and be able to make decisions quickly and have certain experiences. But the point here is to notice that when it comes to a lot of our mental processes, this kind of backfilling or this covering up the blind spots, it can have some repercussions. We oftentimes don't see things accurately or the way they really are. So maybe think back to a recent disagreement or a falling out or a misunderstanding that you've had with someone. And then notice the space between the story that you were telling yourself about what they did and why they were wrong and what they should have done and all that stuff. Notice the space between that and the truth that there's so much other information that we didn't have or that we have no idea about. What was going on for them, why they were motivated to do what they did, what it was like to be inhabiting their body as their brain was making those decisions and those assumptions based on their past experiences. There's just this vast blind spot that is kind of inevitable. And again, the goal here is not to make that good or bad, but it's just to come into contact with the reality of our biology and how the brain works, how so much of what we experience is, in fact, what neuroscientists call confabulations or controlled hallucinations the brain creates. And it's using some data from the present, but also a ton of data from the past. And there we are, making assumptions, projecting, doing the best that we can with some pretty imperfect information. And the point of coming into contact with that truth is humility, kindness, and compassion. It's just to come into direct contact with the imperfectness of that situation and to hopefully infuse more of those situations with awareness and a desire to be compassionate and kind, curious and open. Forgiving. Maybe setting the intention as you head into the weekend. And remember that what you're perceiving and what you're going to be experiencing is based on a pretty imperfect data set. Much of it is going to be backfilled by the brain. And just knowing that may soften your stance or open you up a little bit more to, again, being more curious, more humility, cutting people more slack. Take a deep breath in. Long exhale through the mouth. And on the exhale, holds for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and open your eyes. Hope this one wasn't too esoteric or too out there, but I always love merging the just the sort of neuroscience pieces with the subjective experience, I found for me personally that really helps me remember to stay connected with what's meaningful to me. So hope that's the case for you guys too. Have a great weekend, everyone. See you on Monday. I'll stick around for a few more if anyone wants to chat.